Hello everyone, welcome to another video tutorial on the Code Angle YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be showing us how to make use of the provide HTTP clients in Angular to make HTTP requests. We'll be making an HTTP request to a public REST API using the provide HTTP client in Angular 16. As we all know, Angular has been making lots of updates, and one of the new updates is to make use of the provide HTTP client instead of the HTTP client module. So for moduleless application, the provide HTTP client was created for that purpose. So before we get started, make sure to give this video a like, and if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. And with that, let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is to generate a standalone component. So I'm just going to type in the Angular command to do that, which is ngnew, and then the name of the project, which I'm going to call ng-provide, and then add the standalone flag to it. So this project is configured as a standalone application. So I'm going to press enter, and then we'll wait for this to generate the project. We don't need routing for this project, so I'm going to select no, and then I'll go with the default CSS. So this is going to generate our project for us. Now that our new standalone moduleless application has been generated, I'm going to cd into the directory of the project, which is called ng-provide, and then I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code and then check out the project settings. As you can see in the app component.cs file, our project is configured as standalone equals to true, and then we have the default imports that comes along with the standalone component. So the next thing is to generate the service file for this project. So I'm just going to run ng generate service, and then I'm going to put inside the service folder, and I'm going to call that data service. So I just say data. So that's going to generate a new service file for us. As you can see, the data service file has been generated. Let's check our projects and see if it's in the project directory. Yeah, these are data service. And before we proceed, we need to go to the main.cs file. This is where we need to configure our provide HTTP client. So to do that, first off, I'm going to get rid of this app config imports. We don't need that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to create an object, and within this object I'm going to have providers, and then we're going to have an array. This array is where we import the provide HTTP client. So I'm just going to type provide HTTP client, and then we need to import it. So I'm just going to add right above, and I'm going to type import provide HTTP client from @angular/common/HTTP. So I think that should do that. We can now save, and then the configuration for our provide HTTP clients is now complete. So we can make use of our service to consume a REST API and make HTTP requests. So I'm just going to close this file. That's all we need to do in the main.cs file. So the REST API I'll be using is called the JSON Placeholder REST API. So let me just go to the JSON Placeholder.tpcode.com website, and within this website I'm going to grab the URL of the API we want to consume. So I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to make use of the posts API. So all I need to do is just to grab the URL right here. So I head back to my data service file, and since this is just a tutorial, I might not follow the best practice. So I'm just going to put the API URL here. Ideally, you might want to put this in your environment file, which you can also generate. If you check my previous tutorial, I show you how to generate an environment folder and file to configure your API keys and base URL. So you can do that if you want. So for me, I'm gonna just make use of this API URL variable right here. So the next thing I'm going to do is to inject the HTTP client. So in our constructor, I'm going to say private HTTP and then call the HTTP client. We need to import this as well from the Angular common HTTP package, and you can see it's imported in line 1 right here. So next up is to create the function to get the data using the get HTTP request. And to do that, I'm just going to say, in fact, before we proceed to that, I want to create an interface. So within the app directory, I'm going to create an interface called posts .cs. So this interface is going to have four values, which are user ID, title, and body. So I'm just going to type interface, and then I'm going to call it post. And then within the object, I'm just going to say user ID, and it's a type of number. Next up, we have the ID, which is also a type of number. Then we have the title, the string, and finally the body. The body is also a type of string, and I'm going to close this. So within our data service, I'm going to import it right here. But before we do that, we need to create the function to get all the posts from the JSON placeholder we have right here. As you can see, the reason why we created the interface that includes the user ID, the title, and bodies, because that's what is required in the post API. So it needs to tally. So let's quickly create the function. I'm going to call it get all posts. And then we can now say return this http.get, and then we call the API URL we have above by making use of the this keyword. Now we need to set the type of data we are getting by calling the interface. So I'm just going to make this an observable, which we also need to import from RxJS, and then it's going to be a type of post, and we need to set it as an array. We need to import this post from our interface as well. But first, I need to also attach it to our get HTTP request. So it's going to be a type post as well. So we need to import these posts in our data service. To do that, I forgot to put the export keyword in front of this interface. So without the export, we would not be able to import the post. So now we can now easily import the post into our data service. And then we can now save and head straight to the app component.cs file. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to save the post.cs file as well. And then we head straight to the app component.cs file. In the app component.cs file, I'm going to have a lifecycle method called NgOnInit. I also need a constructor. So I'm going to create a constructor. This is where we import our data service. So quickly within the constructor, I can just say private data underscore service equals to data service. Next up, we need to create some variables. So the first variable I'm going to create is post. So this is going to take in of a type of post which we've created in our interface, and we're going to set it equals to an empty array for the initial value. I need to import the posts here as well. I didn't spell the NgOnInit properly. It's supposed to be uppercase I. So with that, we are good to go. So quickly, we can now consume our REST API. I can just say this.service get all posts subscribe, and then this subscribe, I'm going to make it an observer. So I'm going to open a parenthesis and a bracket, and I'm going to create the first observer, which is next. So the next is going to be a type of posts, and I'm going to set this post equals to post. So what I want to do next is to log the result of our post into the console to see if we are able to get the data. So I'm just going to say console.log posts. I'm going to save that. So I need to start the server to see this in action. So I'm just going to type in ngserve -- okay, we don't need the open flag. I'll just open it directly myself in the browser. As you can see, our app has finished compiling. So I'm just going to head straight to the browser and run localhost 4200, and let's open the console by clicking on inspect and then click on console. And as you can see, we have a list of all our data in the console. So we have an array of results showing here with the body ID, title, and user ID, just like we have it in our user interface. So that means we've been able to get the data from the endpoint. So the next thing is to create the error observer in case we have an error. So we're going to create a fat arrow and then pass in an error as an argument, and we can just create a variable above. I can just say error message, give it an initializer, and then give it a type of string. So I can just say this dot error message is equals to error. I think that's fine. And with that, I think that's what we need to do in our app component.cs file. Now I want to display this data in a table. So for me to do that, let me close the tab right here. I need to head to my app component.html file, and then I'm going to get rid of all the boilerplate templates. And once I do that, I'm going to create a table tag. So just type in table, and we're going to have a table row which contains a table header. So the table header is going to be 3. I want to display the ID, the title, as well as the body. So we can just look through the data by creating a tr tag, and within tr tag we can just pass in our ng4 directive by saying ng4 is equals to let posts of posts. The posts variable hold all our data in the ts file, so I can just do a table, a td, and then replicate it 3 more times. And then I'm gonna make use of the curly bracket, and the first thing we want to display is the ID. I'm just gonna say post dot id. Then next up we want the title, so I'm just gonna say post dot title, and then finally I'm just gonna say post dot body. So we have an error because we attached s to this particular post here. It's supposed to be let post of posts. So I'm gonna save, and we didn't spell this body correctly, so I'm gonna add the d right there, and then let's check the browser to see if we're able to get the data on the page. And as you can see, we're able to display all the data from the REST API on this page. Everything is 100 in total, and I think that's all for this tutorial. As you can see, we were able to make use of the provide HTTP clients to fetch data from a REST API. If you have any question, make sure you drop in the comment section. I'll make sure to answer any question you have. And with that, we have come to the end of this tutorial. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.